Hey everybody, we're the Canon Cruisers. I'm JD.
And I'm Randy.
And today we're talking about a non-canon film called The Exterminator.
Yep, this is actually episode 4, I forgot to mention last time, of the non-canonical adventures of JD and Randy.
Or
a
non-canon.
sub-series in which we watch non-canon films.
Or we call it non-canon for short, as I do.
So, this week's movie is the... We're going back in time to 1980 to watch the James Glickenhaus classic, The Exterminator.
Yep, from 1980.
1980. We're going back a whole 3 years from where we just left off in our last movie we watched.
Because the sequel was actually done by Canon, so we wanted to cover the original as well.
Yes. So, just to give you a brief synopsis, when a group of thugs paralyze his friend, Eastland, played by Robert Ginty, becomes a vigilante, embarking on a mission to cleanse New York of organized crime. So the main cast of our film, we have cult classic actor Robert Ginty, as well as Christopher George as Detective James Dalton, and Samantha Egger as Dr. Megan Stewart. Oh, and also Steve James as Michael Jefferson. Those are only characters you really need to know. And fun fact before we move on, Samuel L. Jackson appears in this film as an uncredited extra.
And we would play you a trailer normally, except the trailer for this movie has absolutely no narration, so it would just be a bunch of music, so we're not going to bother.
So we're just going to go straight on into our impressions.
Yes, straight into the impressions. All right, I hated this movie. Your turn, Randy.
It's not worse than The Apple, but it's pretty darn bad. Somehow this movie is a cult classic.
Yep.
But it's really bad.
I don't understand how it's a cult classic. Even The Apple I could understand. Okay, this is bad in a way that's funny. This movie is bad in a way that it's boring.
Bad.
There's nothing about this movie I enjoyed at all.
So, just to give like a rundown of some of the thing, that plot synopsis I gave you, this movie is very much just, here's a plot motivation, and now here's a bunch of unconnected scenes that kind of stem off from this, but don't quite do anything.
Yeah.
Like, I mentioned that there's really only 4 principal actors in the film, like the main ones you should care about, but in reality there's only really no principal actors because nobody does anything.
Nope. People are in and out of the movie all over the place.
It's like the Mr. Detective James Dalton, played by Christopher George, and Dr. Megan Stewart, Samantha Egger. They do nothing in the movie. Like, Samantha Egger, her character serves almost no point except to be part of a romance subplot with the detective that goes nowhere, except that he's at the hospital with no clothes on at some point, and I don't know.
The movie's filled with things like this, that scenes, moments that could be cut and excised from the movie, scenes that go on too long that don't need to be there. It's a righteous mess, this film. It doesn't make any sense.
It's just a series of unconnected events.
It's all unconnected.
That all stem off of simply that John the Exterminator Eastland's black friend from Vietnam, who we are initially led to believe is going to be the hero of the film, is brutally paralyzed during a mugging.
Not murder, and that's very important for a thing I'll get to later.
Yes, and we get some like okay low budget action sequences, but there's no reason. It's I want to say it's like shockingly gory, but no, not really. It's not very good.
Look,
so
the action sequences were done better in Death Wish and the original Dirty Harry, which were 70s types movies, very close to this one.
And yes,
they're better than this. And
this is a
they
Death
don't have
Wish.
As much gore.
This is a Death Wish wannabe movie. This is literally just like, oh hey, let's do a similar plot to the Bronson classic of Death Wish.
Yes, only inferior in every single way. As I said, there's nothing about this movie that sticks with you. There's no coherency. There's no scenes that flow into each other. It just one to the other, to the other.
The only thing that sticks with you in this movie, and I feel like our impressions are almost like rolling over into like what our review of this movie is right now. Like almost like we should just score this and walk out of here without saying highlights and lowlights, but we're not. But I'm just saying that the only thing that sticks with you is the bad in this movie. But so before we get to the bad, let's first talk about our very, very few highlights from the film. JD, let's lead off with you.
The line, Washington will be pleased. There you go.
Washington will be pleased.
Yes, it's like somebody edited a line from Deus Ex, the video game, into this film because it has no purpose in here. And we could also go into that, but that's also...
But that's going to be part of the lowlights. Another one is that there's a really well differently shot sequence at the beginning of the movie that's even credited in the credits as done by a completely production crew called the Vietnam sequence.
Yes.
Which is supposed to set up how much of a badass Jefferson and Eastland are.
Which is the best part of the entire movie because it's very action-packed, very explosive, and a lot of fun, but it's the beginning of the movie.
And then it becomes Death Wish Light with a meandering plot. So that's 2 highlights. So it's like we're not in a complete dumpster fire. And then number 3, which is probably 3 and 4, is the opening song and the closing song.
Oh, yes.
I don't remember their names because I cared so little to find out, but those are the only good things about the movie.
They're very pleasant to listen to considering the rest of the movie had no real standouts other than playing Disco Inferno at one point.
Yes, it had Disco Inferno.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. We might as well go into the lowlights, Randy.
The whole movie. The whole movie is bad. It's disconnected, disjointed, whatever you want to throw at it. It's overly violent, which some people love about the movie, that it's really violent, but it doesn't serve a purpose.
I'm going to be completely honest, and if you want to address this in any sort of comment section you're in, go ahead and let me know because I'm genuinely curious. Why is this a cult classic? There's nothing about this movie that's enjoyable. The action sequences are bad. The drama is bad. The pacing is bad.
The actors are bad.
There's nothing...
Like, literally, the only 2 names I know in this movie, and one of them is just because I always giggle at the name, is Samantha Egger and Mr. Ginty, who is like the most ordinary schlub you can find, which I guess kind of works for the role, but it's just simply...
When you can watch a movie like even, I'm going to say Death Wish 2, Death Wish 3, Death Wish 4, when you can watch the Death Wish movies, what about this movie is better than any of them? And I'm going to say any of them, even like the bad ones like the last one. How? Is there
any scene in the movie that stands out to you, JD, that...
Just let me know. I'm curious.
Is there any scene in this movie that stands out to you as an outstanding low light for this movie?
Outstanding? Oh, yes. There's one very, very...
Before he says this, let me preface this that before we started recording, I had to listen to him rant. I gave him a puppy calendar to calm him down. Spittle was flying as he was shouting at the air about this scene. So, JD, take it away and tell them what it was.
There is a few things I hate more about fiction than cutting the legs out from under you. When you have a plot motivation, when you have a plot setup, when you have a character that exists for one particular reason, and you destroy it later on, I can't forgive it no matter what happens. In this movie, our main character is set off on his crusade because his friend was attacked and crippled and sent to the hospital, which is... It's a good motivation to start doing something. Okay, I can get that. The problem is, later on in the movie, when he's in the hospital, on a respirator, on drugs,
he can't talk.
He can't talk.
He can't move.
He can't move.
He's barely cognizant of what's going on around him. He's in so much pain.
He has no idea what's happening. And this is far later in the movie when he hasn't been seen for like an hour. That's how bad the movie's paced, by the way. The main character goes in and asks him if he wants to die. And he kills him. He literally destroyed his whole purpose for going on a crusade in the first place by doing worse than the people who put his friend in the hospital.
I guess there could be an argument made there that he's putting him out of the misery, but there's nothing there. It's like...
No, there's nothing.
It's like I said, the only thing that could not redeem it, but at least would make it make sense within the context of the movie, and I've already had this conversation with JD about this, is that if he was able to speak and literally these words came out of his mouth was, "Please kill me. My family will at least get the insurance money. I'll never be able to work again."
Even if I would have disagreed with that, it would have been an attempt at something.
At trying to justify it instead of just kind of him going in. He literally walks in and goes, "Do you want to die?" And the guy kind of nods.
And he goes, visits his wife and tries to explain why his friend would be better off dead, while his kids are in the room, by the way. And this is supposed to be the main character we're supposed to root for, who literally did worse than the people who set him off in the first place. Why am I supposed to root for this character to do anything except die at the end? Which he doesn't, by the way, which is probably a worse highlight because I hated the main character at that point and I wanted him to die.
My low light of the film is the shoehorned in government conspiracy plot.
Yes. That was really dumb.
Okay, so in Death Wish, a large part of the movie is that there's supposed to be a conversation of what if people take it into their own hand? It's like it's okay. So crime rate's going down, so we can't arrest him or outright do anything because it's like it'll look bad on us.
There's a political motivation,
and that made sense. This one here, nobody explains this better than the Wikipedia page, where literally for some reason it's like they keep going. The detective keeps getting a call from the CIA, which he keeps ignoring, and I'm yelling at the scene. I'm like, what does the CIA have to do with it? There's nothing political on it.
Yeah.
So when they finally get him, this is what the CIA says to him. The CIA has heard of the Exterminator, reaches an odd conclusion.
It is an odd conclusion.
Based on the current administration's promise to cut down on crime rates, they believe the Exterminator is either an opposition party stunt or a foreign power's ruse to humiliate the current administration by exposing their inability to handle the city's crime problem.
It's the stupidest. I don't even know how to process that properly. Because a serial killer is going around killing people, obviously he must be a political plant.
Serial killers going around killing organized crime elements, which we haven't really gone into, has included low-life thugs, a dog, a mob boss, a meat mobster, who he turned into ironically, hamburger meat.
Yes.
A chick pimp, which is actually like a child prostitution and white slavery ring, who he burns alive, more muggers and an old lady, and then steals her motorcycle. I might be misremembering that scene.
Oh, and a sadistic pedophile who he shot in the privates, who turns out later on to be a
senator. Yes,
he could have been a janitor and it wouldn't have made any difference.
So yeah, who looks like a cross between Woody Allen and Danny DeVito. I just put it out there.
Yes, Woody DeVito, we called him.
Yep. That is like honestly like next to the non-existent plot, next to the very like pointless action. This is a sadistic vigilante movie. But focus on sadistic. There's nothing
enjoyable about it.
There's no think piece about it. There's nothing that the action's not great.
It's not even a turn your brain off movie. There's nothing.
Maybe I'll try to post it in the comments or something like that, the actual trailer, because you look for the Exterminator 1980 trailer. You watch it and you go, like in a modern day terms, it looks like a John Wick-esque low-budget romp. And what we get is an absolute mess of a movie.
The trailer has every single action sequence in the movie.
Or parts of every single action sequence.
I think they even show the scene at the end where the detective gets shot dead in the trailer.
By the CIA before saying the line.
Washington will be pleased.
Washington will be pleased.
Very Deus Ex. And it's totally out of context with anything else in the film, but everything in this movie is out of context with everything else in the film. It's an incredible mess. I hated this film. I hated it.
With that, what is your score for this movie?
You really think I have to think about this? I mean,
we just had 5 seconds of silence while you thought on it. What is your score for this film?
I'm just stunned that you think you need to ask what it is. It's a 5 out of 5. Of course, it's a 1. It's awful. It's the worst film we've covered. I hate it worse than The Apple. I hate this movie. I'm
gonna be the Roper to your Ebert, and I'm gonna give this movie a 5 out of 5. Just to be spiteful, regardless of how much I've hated this movie.
Thumbs up.
Yep, hate thumbs up. No, this movie is a 1. This movie is not as bad as The Apple, but when I'm sitting there going,
whether it's as bad or not, I hate it more.
It's if I'm sitting there going, Schizoid and New Year's Evil, which a little digression here. I've been secretly, like, every time we have a session, I secretly write, like, fan fiction based on New Year's Evil to make it into a better movie. And Hospital Massacre, these movies, I'm like, these are my number 2 movies. These are my 2 out of 5 movies. Yeah. They're better than The Exterminator.
I honestly can't believe how much I hated this movie.
This movie is bad.
Look, I like action movies, and I've given all of them a chance, even the ones that aren't that great. This one doesn't have.
It's anything. Like I understand, like people can like cult classic movies, and I understand it might not be for everybody.
I want to know why people like this movie. I'm not even joking.
It's
I want to know.
It's like if you can change my mind on it, if you can give me a good reason why you what stands out, because we've recently watched a cult classic movie, which you'll hear later on that I surprisingly really liked.
Yes.
which I'm not going to spoil what movie that one is for you, but I really liked it.
Well, even the ones you didn't care for, like Sword and the Sorcerer, I think you could understand why people like that movie.
Or that one, at least I was like, that would be like 2 out of 5, but I'm going to give it a 3 because this one is, for most of the movie, I was like, no, this is a very much a 2. And then it's like, no, this movie's a 1. Why won't this movie end? When I came to the conclusion about 50 minutes in that the plot, that it's been meandering for like an hour at this point, and there's no plot has taken place.
There isn't really a plot at all. And we're going to be covering the sequel, and I just want to put
Next
this in.
episode, we're covering the sequel.
I just want to put this in because I want this saved for posterity. I don't understand how people consider the sequel worse. I haven't seen the sequel yet, and it very much could be worse somehow, but I don't understand how it's worse. There's no way it can be worse. If I'm going to eat my words, you'll hear me talk about it on the next episode, but I don't understand.
It's like we're at the point right now that if it has a coherent plot that I can follow, I'll probably give it a 2.
At the very least, I just don't understand.
People, this is the bare minimum that we require of a movie. Is the plot coherent? Can I follow?
Yes, do the characters' motivations match what's happening on screen?
We didn't mention this earlier, but I'll mention it now. We had to read the Wikipedia article to make sure we caught all the plot elements of this thing because we weren't aware there was a plot.
Because it keeps going off in tangents all the time. It's very much vignettes.
This is the Randy of
Barely.
movies where I go off on tangents all the time.
It's not a good movie at all. And with that, I really want to stop talking about this movie. So thanks for hanging around for this long. If you like this movie, please let me know why you like it. I really want to know. And we're done.
Yeah, so as we said, it's like the next movie we're literally going to watch, so you can double feature this if you want, is going to be The Exterminator 2.
Yes, The Exterminator 2.
And then I'm going to eat my hat when for some reason I can't find a copy of The Exterminator 2.
Oh, you will be able to, don't worry.
Because I've jinxed us.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. And Randy just walked out of the house, and I'm going to join him. Bye-bye.